Je veux l'abolition de la chasse à courre. C'est une horreur. Il faut absolument que le gouvernement...
I would rather die in loneliness than spend another day beside those men. At 90, Brigitte Bardot isn't writing memoirs, she's declaring war. In her villa by the shores of St. Tropez, she's not recounting love stories, she's naming her enemies. For men she once laid her head beside are now cast straight into the furnace of memory. Who drove her to force suicide attempts, only to preach morality on national television? Who turned her into a sex doll in the name of art? And who locked her in a golden cage, threw away the key, and watched her slowly die under the spotlight? The first was the vile director who created the Brigitte Bardot the world lusted after, then tore her apart, body and soul. Bardot was not just an actress. She was a living corpse paraded like fresh meat in the media market. As the first woman to appear nude on French screens, Bardot wasn't honored, she was devoured. Men wanted to sleep with her. Women wanted her gone. The press wanted her tears at prime time. The church branded her a symbol of decadence. And while the world feasted on her pain, no one ever asked, is she okay? In the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, people didn't just watch Brigitte Bardot, they consumed her with their eyes, their desires, and the cruelty of the era. Born in 1934 in Paris, Bardot was the woman who made both Europe and Hollywood fall to their knees. But behind the sensual photos lay a lifetime of suffocation, manipulation, and betrayal by the very men who claimed to love her. I gave my body, but no one wanted my heart. A line colder than death. Bardot starred in over 40 films, many banned, many labeled as disguised pornography. She slept with directors, musicians, millionaires, even princes, and was dubbed by the media as an educated whore. She once slit her wrists in a bathroom, took sleeping pills on set, locked herself in a room for 3 days without light. For suicide attempts. For failures. And each one began with a man disguised as love. At 39, at the peak of her fame, Bardot vanished. No farewells, no waves, no explanations. She left behind only one sentence that silenced the world: I'm not dead. But I'm no longer alive either. And now, after 50 years of silence, she laughs coldly. It's time to call out by name every man who turned my life into a living hell. Subscribe so you don't miss Bardot's next revelation. Brace yourself, what you're about to hear isn't a love story. It's a betrayal log, a diary of a symbol strangled by the very men who once worshipped her. And the first name on that list, her first husband. Roger Vadim, the man who created Brigitte Bardot, then mercilessly destroyed her. If there is one man who both built a legend and dragged her into hell, it is Roger Vadim, ex-husband, director, and betrayer. Brigitte Bardot was just 15 when Roger Vadim laid eyes on her, not as a young girl, but as a statue waiting to be sculpted. The man, nearly a decade older, with a dangerous smile and a voice like honey, read every secret longing of a teenage girl, to be loved, admired, and freed from the gilded cage of Parisian aristocracy. At 18, Bardot left home, her parents, society, and every expectation, to marry him. And on their wedding night, she didn't just lose her virginity. She lost her freedom. Vadim wasn't just her first husband. He was the director of her life, literally and figuratively. He created Brigitte Bardot, the global sex symbol, the half-angel half-seductress muse, through the film Études, Crée la Femme, 1956. She appeared nude on screen before she was even 22. France went wild. Hollywood lost its mind. But Vadim didn't do it out of love. He did it because he knew she would sell. He saw Bardot's body as premium merchandise, soft, fiery, able to rotate 360 degrees in front of the camera. While the world obsessed over Bardot, Vadim slept with other actresses, recounting their bedroom stories as jokes at dinner parties. He once declared, "Brigitte would be nothing without me." Bardot, in an interview decades later, laughed bitterly, "I gave him everything, my body, my soul, my youth, and he gave me back a bed with another woman in it." Vadim never hit her. He did something worse. He made her believe she couldn't exist without being sexy. That love meant sacrificing your flesh just to earn a passing glance from a man. I used to be his goddess, until I started speaking like a human. Bardot never forgave him, not for leaving, but for stealing her true self and replacing it with a soulless version the world would worship. Roger Vadim, the man who created the Brigitte Bardot the world adored, and killed the real Brigitte forever. If the first man who made you tremble with love is also the first who made you disgusted with yourself, who can you ever trust again? Stay tuned, because the second man made her give up even the title of mother. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. The man who made her a mother, then stole her right to be one. If Roger Vadim was the man who killed the girl named Brigitte, then Jacques Charrier was the one who buried the mother inside her. When Bardot met Jacques Charrier, she was dangling between fame and despair. Jacques, a handsome, gentle actor, seemed like calm water in the storm of media frenzy. Bardot thought she had found peace. But no one expected it. The quiet ones are the best at suffocating. They married in 1959. A year later, Bardot gave birth to a son, Nicolas. All of France exploded in celebration. The country's most sensual goddess had become a mother. But behind the hospital doors was a woman collapsing. Bardot fell into postpartum depression. Not because she hated her child, but because she was forced into motherhood under a moral standard. Jacques didn't ask what she needed. He gave orders. He told her to quit acting, stay home, fulfill the role of a proper French wife. When Bardot asked to return to acting, he opposed. He said bluntly, "A decent mother doesn't act in the kinds of films you used to make." They divorced. Jacques won custody of their son. Bardot was forbidden from seeing Nicolas. No letters. No photos. No voice. "I gave birth to a child, then the whole world told me I had to disappear so he could live." Bardot wasn't allowed to be a mother. She was labeled a danger to her child. The press called her a venomous snake with a maternal instinct of zero, all based on Jacques' accusations. Years later, Nicolas grew up. When a journalist asked him about his mother, he replied, "She's not my mother." No slap hurts more than that sentence. Bardot once wrote in her diary, "Perhaps I'm the only woman stripped of motherhood, not because I abandoned my child, but because I didn't mother the way people wanted me to." Jacques Charrier never yelled. Never hit. He simply watched Bardot collapse and nodded along with every social sentence thrown at her. If the man who once placed his hand on your belly to hear the baby's heartbeat ends up being the one who ensures you're never allowed to say the word mother, then who else is left to forgive? Stay, because the third man would turn love into a 24/7 surveillance system. Subscribe and follow, because the next one is scarier than a locked cage. Gunter Sachs, the man who loved her with diamond rings and hidden cameras. Gunter Sachs appeared like a scene from a movie, handsome, wealthy, refined, heir to the legendary Sachs empire spanning across Europe. And to win over Brigitte Bardot, he did something no man had ever done before. He hired a helicopter to drop thousands of roses onto her villa in Saint-Tropez. Bardot melted. Who wouldn't? A man sculpted like a statue, with more money than one could have, looking at you like you're the last goddess on earth. But Bardot didn't know, he didn't love her. He wanted to possess her. Their marriage began with champagne, red carpets, and sweet nothings, and ended in silence, hidden cameras, and an unnamed suffocation. Gunter monitored her every move, from the way she smiled over coffee to how she spoke with the gardener. Bardot discovered cameras in the bedroom, the dressing room, even the hallways. He called it security. She called it a prison with cameras. I once thought being kept in someone's heart was happiness, until I realized I was being watched like a product about to lose value. Gunter never yelled. He quietly collected her emotional data and manipulated her. He bought her everything, jewelry, luxury cars, yachts, but also made her believe that if she left him, no one would ever want her again. Bardot once described, "He loved me like a collector loves his most expensive item. Placed me on a pedestal. And locked the glass case." She lived in a glamorous shell, but every night she had to perform the role of the perfect wife for invisible lenses. Gunter didn't need to love her, he needed her to stay within the mold he had created. Beautiful. Desirable. Silent. The marriage ended swiftly. Gunter married someone else. Bardot was left behind, not with the gifts, but with the feeling that she had once been a goddess, now permanently framed in glass. If someone once called you their only love, but feared your freedom to breathe, was that ever really love? Stay, because the fourth man didn't control Bardot with cameras. He did it with his eyes, and a deadly silence. Sami Frey, the man who didn't need to speak to make her fall apart. After 2 shattered marriages and a romance watched through hidden cameras, Brigitte Bardot met Sami Frey, a quiet actor, with somber eyes and lips that never truly smiled. She called him a sharp blade wrapped in velvet. Sami didn't flirt, didn't gift, didn't chase. Which only pulled Bardot deeper into his coldness. She loved him the way an abandoned child loves their wound, because at least the wound feels real. They lived together for a time. Few knew much, because Sami hated attention, hated the press, hated fame, and hated the very light that had clung to Bardot all her life. He didn't hit her, didn't cheat, didn't walk away, but he also never touched her, in any sense of the word. He could sit in the same room with Bardot for hours, and not say a single word. He could watch her cry, and walk past as if avoiding a puddle. Bardot wrote in her diary, "He didn't hate me. But he didn't see me. I lived next to someone who didn't believe I was real." That feeling, being treated like an illusion inside your own love, killed her more slowly than any blow ever could. Sami Frey was known for his silence. And with Bardot, he was so silent that she couldn't tell when she had stopped being his lover. She still cooked. Still played the role of someone in love. But no one played it back. There was no clear ending. No official goodbye. Just one morning, Bardot woke up and realized he wasn't there, not because he had left, but because he had been gone for a long time, through his eyes. Not everyone who makes you cry is the villain. Sometimes, the scariest person is the one who makes you stop wanting to cry at all. Roger Vadim turned her into a legend, then discarded her like last season's fashion. Jacques Charrier gave her the role of a mother, then stripped it away like a sentence passed down. Gunter Sachs loved her with diamond rings and hidden cameras. And Sami Frey, who, without a single cruel word, still had the power to unravel her in silence. For men. For chapters of nightmares. For times she died in a different version of herself. But Bardot doesn't tell her story to be pitied. She tells it to reclaim the right to define herself. Not a sex doll. Not a bad mother. Not a symbol. She is a woman, who loved, made mistakes, and survived. I'm not dead. But I'm no longer alive. That line is no longer despair, it's a declaration. Because she survived to speak, while those who hurt her are now forever silent, or erased from public memory. Which of the 4 do you think cut the deepest? Comment and share this video, because somewhere, another woman may be living this very story in silence. Follow the channel so you don't miss the stories the world was never supposed to hear. I'm sure of myself. I'm sure of my talent. I like who I am. Those are the words of Dolly Parton, the queen of country music, the eternal American icon. But behind the bright blonde hair, the sweet southern smile, and the sparkling rhinestones, there is a heart that has been broken by betrayal. For decades, Dolly kept quiet. She smiled. She forgave. Or so we thought. Now, at 79, the truth is slowly emerging. Dolly Parton never forgets. In every interview, memoir, and seemingly random statement, there is a long list of names that were once loved, then crossed out. Shocking lawsuits. Backstabbing from close friends. Unnamed sarcasm. And the last name on this list will leave you stunned. Imagine, the person who took you to the top is also the first to push you down. For Dolly Parton, that name was Porter Wagoner. He wasn't just the man who led her career, he was the man who laid the foundation for the splendor of a legend. The Porter Wagoner Show, in 1967, made Dolly a national star. But the brighter it became, the darker it became behind the scenes. Porter, with his conservative personality and his ambition to dominate the stage, began to see Dolly's aura as a threat. And when she chose freedom, chose to leave and take control of her own destiny, he did not forgive. In 1979, he sued her. $3 million. A public, bitter legal battle, from the man he once called teammate. Dolly didn't respond with anger, she wrote, "I will always love you." A love song? No. It was a declaration of proud letting go. But the story wasn't over. Because just when the past seems to have fallen asleep, another voice rings out, and this time, it's a surprising counterattack from the indie world. Jeff Tweedy, frontman of Wilco, indie rock icon, and the man who dared to bluntly criticize the legend of Dolly Parton. In 2023, in a seemingly harmless interview, Tweety was asked, "Is there a famous song that you find emotionally draining?" He didn't hesitate. He answered immediately, "I Will Always Love You." The shock hit. It wasn't just that it was a song. It was an immortal love song, written by Dolly, and elevated to legendary heights by Whitney Houston. A breakup anthem, a cross-generational emotional symbol, and yet to Jeff Tweedy, it was just a soulless note. The internet exploded. Country fans, pop fans, even music lovers of all genres, rose to defend Dolly. The comments section was filled with personal memories, first dances, the pain of losing loved ones, the times those lyrics healed her. And now, a rock star dares to speak indifferently. Dolly doesn't retort. She doesn't need to. No sarcastic tweets, no counterattacks. She stays silent, but that's the most dangerous move. Because a few months later, Tweedy's new music project falls into absolute silence. No fame. No charts. No aftershocks. Was it just a coincidence? Or was it fate that came faster than he thought? They were once expected to write a glorious chapter in the history of female music, but behind the trio's halo was a complex, delicate, and not without cracks. Dolly Parton. Linda Ronstadt. Emmylou Harris. 3 names, 3 monuments, together creating a legendary alliance that seemed perfect. Voices blended like magic, fame was untouchable, and expectations from fans were as high as Mount Everest. But behind the scenes, there was a silent struggle between busy schedules, artistic egos, and irreconcilable differences. Ronstadt was a perfectionist, meticulous, obsessed with perfection in the studio. Harris was instinctive, rustic, with the spirit of traditional country music. Dolly was by then a pop culture icon, reaching far beyond Nashville with a series of solo projects and films. The idea of trio had existed since the late 70s, but it was not until 1987 that it took shape. The album debuted as a triumph, winning awards, dominating the charts, and proving the power of female collaboration in music. But it was a fleeting moment, not a lasting bond. Dolly later softly confided, "We had 3 different careers and 3 different ideas," a short sentence, but enough to see, respect was there, but harmony was fragile. And right then, when her fame reached its peak, a younger, stronger voice, from the global stage, stepped in and took away one of Dolly's greatest masterpieces. Fourth place goes to Whitney Houston, who turned a sweet ballad into a global icon, and inadvertently overshadowed the person who wrote it, Dolly Parton. "I Will Always Love You," the song Dolly wrote to break up with Porter Wagoner, took on a whole new life when Whitney covered it in 1992's The Bodyguard. The cover not only touched the hearts of millions, it shattered records, dominated charts around the world, and became one of the most iconic songs in music history. But then something strange happened. Many people forgot that Dolly was the author. The media, young audiences, and even some artists began to only mention Whitney. There were whispers in the industry, was Dolly being erased from her own legacy? If she was bitter, she never showed it. When asked about that version, Dolly replied, "I cried when I heard it. But not because of the money. I cried because it was so beautiful." But make no mistake, Dolly wasn't just altruistic, she was also a genius strategist. She kept the rights to the song, refusing to sell them to the movie producers. The result? Millions of dollars in royalties, and she used them to buy a shopping mall in Nashville. A big, quiet gamble. And as the lights dimmed on "I Will Always Love You," someone else stepped in. A new star. Younger. Bolder. And closer than ever, Dolly's own goddaughter. Miley Cyrus, the rebellious goddaughter, who has transformed her image in ways no one could have imagined, including Dolly Parton. Miley didn't just shed the Disney shadow, she burned the entire Hannah Montana image with unprecedented daring fire. Short hair, controversial performance at the VMAs, provocative music videos, rebellious style, and unbridled lyrics. Miley didn't change, she transformed. As the world stared in shock, one question rang out: what does Dolly think about all this? More than just a colleague, Dolly Parton is Miley's godmother, a relationship that is both sacred and complicated. Many speculated that Dolly was secretly disappointed, even horrified by the shocking performances. But as usual, Dolly was not impulsive. She was calm and reserved. In 2023, Dolly shared, "I told her things that only a godmother could say. But I let her be herself. No criticism. No condemnation. Just encouragement mixed with restraint, unconditional love mixed with quiet concern." Even though the world wasn't ready for Miley, Dolly was there. She supported courage, celebrated talent, and independence, even when it meant offending her audience. And then, in a seemingly innocuous discussion years ago, someone said something Dolly will never forget. And perhaps the coldest blow of all, a young, ambitious star dropped a line that silenced the room. Dolly Parton stopped being important in country music 20 years ago. There was no recording. No official confirmation. But the words, "if true," echoed through the music world like a veiled insult. It took place in the early 2010s, at a televised public conference. It wasn't loud, it wasn't harsh, just a passing remark, but it froze the room. No one responded. No one stood up for Dolly. And no one forgot. Dolly? As usual, silence. But it was a deliberate silence. She didn't name names. She didn't respond. She didn't post any cryptic statuses. Until the invitation came, the artist, now more prominent, asked her to duet on the biggest tour of her career. Tickets sold out. Cameras ready. Stage waiting. Dolly refused. A source close to her clarified, "Why sing with someone who thinks you're out of date?" No one confirmed. No one denied. But the story spread across forums, podcasts, behind the scenes, like a secret that everyone knew, but no one dared to mention. Because Dolly didn't need to speak up. She just withdrew. And that silence was heavier than any song she ever wrote. Dolly Parton, the woman with rhinestones and a sweet laugh, was actually forged from cold steel. She brought grace and tolerance to the world, but also did not hesitate to withdraw her light when her pride was challenged. Which story surprised you the most? Leave a comment below. And if you want to discover more untold truths from behind the scenes of country music, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Because this is just the tip of the iceberg that Dolly has kept secret for decades.